Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of a fantastic little piece of writing that I've had so much fun with over the past few days, and I am so excited to talk about it. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Merbaum. Thank you so much for having me here today. My new book is called Vampires at Sea. I like to call it a horror comedy snack because it's a novella. It's quite short. And it's about two emotional vampires from San Francisco in a long-term partnership who go on a queer cruise around the Black Sea, partly as an attempt to smooth things over in their relationship. And they meet a non-binary influencer named Heaven who capsizes the reality of their relationship to, so to speak. So it's a fun romp.
It really is. Before we get to the book itself, could we talk a little bit about your writing career and your journey to the book? In particular, I'm really curious about your Pick Your Potions project. So yeah, tell us about how you got here.
Yeah. So Pick Your Potions is a consortium of writing, witchery, and drinks that started out when I was preparing for my first novel, The Gold Persimmon, from the same publisher to come out. And that was in like the throes of COVID. Things were completely shut down. And as part of my preparation for the book coming out, I was building community with other writers who were in the same boat. And so I'd also been on my own developing a little bit of mixology habit. And I decided to offer to other authors to make books, to make drinks for them inspired by their book, which I call book tales. And I did a few and just kind of asked generally in this Facebook group, does anybody else want me to do this for you? And the response was a little overwhelming at first, but I spent months just like churning these out, reading the books and looking for ingredients that would represent the themes and imagery of the book. So it's kind of like trying to transform a text into a sensory taste experience. And that's kind of where Pick Your Potions came from. That's kind of how it was born. And now Pick Your Potions has expanded to include recipe decks. So I have the Wheel of the Year, Zodiac, and the Mortal Goddess mocktail recipe deck. All of these are tarot-like cards with recipes with lots of information and like fun facts and things like that. Because that's kind of like gotta turn my down. That's kind of my area. And also Pick Your Potions includes the Study Coven, which is an independent study series for people who are writers or interested in becoming writers, where I send out a syllabus a month in advance that includes writing prompts, reading, supplemental reading, a playlist, etc. We work our way through it on our own time as we see fit, and then we meet for discussion. Sometimes we have authors come visit us, like Sarah Graham, Andrea Lawler, J.D. Scott, and West Moss, Ariel Gore, others. And then we also have a workshop portion as well, where we look at what we've written for the class. So yeah, that's Pick Your Potions. I do a lot of mixology classes for libraries, which is again another wonderful convergence of all the interests. And I also have done some things for various events. I publish recipes pretty regularly. I had a year-long column in Electric Literature. That might have been more than you were bargaining for, but that's Pick Your Potions.
Wow. That is so cool. And I really like the community aspect of it because there are parts of the writing life that are so solitary, and it's really nice to sort of cultivate community where you can. Um, my next question might be a little obvious now, but what would go in the Vampires at Sea cocktail?
Actually really glad that you asked that because I've been working on a little cocktail mocktail ebook for this book. So I've already created about 6 recipes for this book. There's one called Heaven, there's one called Lilitu, there's a Chimera, there's Ennui. So actually I've been working on that. And the Chimera has like all these different florals in it, with I think whiskey, and there's one, the mocktail has jasmine and lychee and yuzu in it. It's really nice with yeah, so that's I've already been, I'm on it, which means that anybody who reads the book and wants the ebook can sign up for it. I've created a link that's not quite live yet, and I will send it to them. And it's a free thing. It's a giveaway. So if you'd like one, just let me know and I'll share it with you once it's ready to go.
Well, thank you. That is such a cool idea to do a tie-in like that for a book. And yeah, those flavors seem like spot on without too revealing too much. So,
I took every scent that heaven had and turned and combined that into a drink. So yes, trying to pull from that.
cool. So, for this book, what was the inception point? Was it a character or a setting, a line of dialogue, or just like a vibe? Like, what was the seed from which this sprung?
I actually went through a really long process with this book. I just didn't realize that that was the book I was writing. In 2021-ish, like same time that I was preparing for my first book to come out, I was writing other things. And I really wanted to write something about a marriage. I wanted to write something about a couple who'd been together a long time. And I wanted there to be some involvement of like a third partner. And so I originally had this idea of this couple that goes on a cruise and meets somebody and things don't go quite as planned. And then COVID happened, and I was like, I don't want to write about cruise ships right now. I also was living in San Francisco at that time, and there was the whole like princess cruise ship debacle. A lot of people got very sick because of that. So I kind of just put that aside because I just couldn't quite figure it out. And then at some point I realized, oh, they should be emotional vampires, the people on this couple. And from there, it just kind of just took off. So I wrote the draft really quickly, and it actually moved into production very quickly with my editor, which was really fun. So once I kind of fit that piece in, it started kind of writing itself. And I had a lot of fun with it. So that was also a plus.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the marital couple at the center of this, Hugh and Rebecca. I'd love to know about your process for crafting them as individuals and also their dynamic. I am so interested in like what immortality would do to a marriage. Like that's it's like simultaneously really kind of exciting and nice and very scary.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagine that. Like, well, and I also thought about if you lived that long, because vampires are always like, so perfect in their recollections of things. They can tell you, oh, yes, 3 centuries ago on this day. And I thought, I would not remember that at all. I would not remember anything. So part of it is, they don't have a great memory of what their relationship has been like. They've been together so long, but also they've kind of gotten used to their own dynamic. And part of what happens for Rebecca is that the challenges she faces on this trip start opening her eyes a little bit about how else, things could go. I had a great deal of fun writing her character because she's such a narcissist. My first book has a lot of like self-loathing, unsure, insecure feelings. And it was such fun and such a change of pace to write something where the character just utterly loves herself, and it's like, I am badass and that is that. And that was really kind of empowering for me to write. And I was like, yes, she may be an awful being, but she's got this one part right that she should appreciate her own self. And for her partner, I kept picturing this old world, artist dude kind of wandering around San Francisco where I used to live. And I wanted him to be a combination of some of the like challenges of the art world and of how we look at art and its representation, and also for him to be not overly masculine as well, but still attractive and still alluring. But the contrast is that while Rebecca is like really into herself and very narcissistic and feeds off people's desires, Hugh is more reticent, sometimes self-loathing, and feeds off people's sadness. So they're in some ways a real mismatch.
Ooh, yeah, I really love their dynamic. It feels very lived in the way that it would be after, untold years. And
Yeah.
I do like the fact that their memories are incomplete because, yeah, like I can't remember what I like ate for lunch yesterday sometimes. Like it absolutely makes sense that like vampires would not remember like centuries and centuries ago with perfect clarity. So,
Yeah. Well, memory is also an amalgam. I mean, psychologically, what we remember might be what we remember of a memory and not actually what happened. If you've ever had memories where you're watching yourself from outside, that's a special type of memory that is definitely not accurate to what our actual experience is. So I wanted to kind of play with that concept as well of, how memory really functions in the brain, because it's mostly fiction.
Yeah. I love Rebecca's voice too because she is our narrator as well. I'd love if you could talk about getting her voice down and the fourth wall breaks. Like I really love when she addresses you, the reader, directly. Like it feels like you are gossiping with her, like over a glass of wine that she's not drinking, but you are, you know. So
I love that idea. Yeah, I had a great deal of fun with her voice as well. I felt like in this novel, when I wrote my first novel, it was like so halting in the process. I felt like I had to squeeze every word out of myself, and I struggled with how to represent different perspectives. And in this one, I felt like I kind of hit my stride in terms of developing a voice. And I didn't really hold myself back at all. So I let her be as outrageous as she wanted to be. And actually, in terms of getting her voice right, when you asked that question, I was thinking that when I started creating the Cocktail Mocktail ebook, which is in production, I wrote the introduction to it in Rebecca's voice. And I was like challenging myself to see, can I still do it? Can I still write her voice? It's her voice is really, I'm sure a lot of people are going to think that she represents my personality because that's kind of what happens when you have a first person narrator who matches your gender. But she makes fun of a lot of things that I hold dear. She makes fun of witches. She's not interested in books. Books are my whole life. She's really dismissive of a lot of things of our culture. She claims she doesn't know anything about celebrities and doesn't care. That was really refreshing and kind of fun. And it was also fun to poke fun at myself, and the things I like. For example, art, So Rebecca made jokes about all of us, basically.
I do remember like I audibly gasped at the line about her not liking books. I was like, like that was the first thing that truly shocked me that she did.
Shocking, right? I mean, if I could live forever, do you know how much I would read? Right? Like in Only Lovers Left Alive, Tilda Swinton is just combing those pages. That's what I would be doing. And she has no interest in that whatsoever. She wants to be the center of attention. She wants to have sex. She wants to have adventure. And she does not care about dusty old books written by humans.
Let's talk about the cruise that the couple finds themselves on. It's a queer cruise of the Baltic Sea, and it at one sounds like really like a nice environment to be in, and also like terrible in the way that like commercial cruises are always kind of terrible. And I'm really interested too in the sort of like the critique of rainbow capitalism that I sort of sense like in some of the descriptions. So can you talk about that?
Sure, I may offend some people who are perhaps really devoted cruise takers, and if I do, I am so sorry. But to me, a cruise is the ultimate floating horror show. They're enormous polluters. There are often outbreaks of illness on cruises, which doesn't surprise me when I think about how they have to leave port with all of the food that they're going to serve you at any point. They're very crowded. They have their own culture going on. And because of international waters and kind of the loopholes of the legal system there, crimes occur on cruise ships all the time that go unreported or unsolved. Also, there's a tremendous human rights abuse issue in terms of the people who work on cruises. The people who do a lot of the toughest labor, a lot of people come from the Philippines and other countries where they might be impoverished, and they don't get paid hardly anything, but they are worked to the bone. And of course, when COVID did happen and there were people trapped on cruise ships, not just passengers, but staff, there were suicides. So, there's a really, really dark aspect of cruise ships. So I wanted to kind of expose the conspicuous consumption of the cruise ship. I had a great deal of fun creating that as a setting with like all the food and the rainbow, everything. I just let myself go crazy. But there is a slide on the on the cruise ship that is run by the sewer system of the ship. It's the poop slide, as Rebecca says, which is, I know, so gross. That is a real detail. I read a fascinating, hilarious article in The Atlantic by this guy who was a writer for the magazine and was paid to go on a cruise ship. And he was so lonely and sad the whole time. And he described an actual slide that's powered by the passengers' waste. So that's real. I mean, I really embellished a lot of things, but a lot of the stuff about what goes on there is real. And I do think that there are questions about corporate approval. And I think we're seeing a lot of that right now as DEI is disabled across the nation. We are starting to see which companies actually cared about it to begin with and which ones were paying lip service to diversity, equity, inclusion in order to attract certain customers. And that's something I've always been curious about and always been wary of as well. Having lived in San Francisco a long time, I now live in Michigan, but I lived in San Francisco for 10 years. The Pride Parade has a lot of corporate sponsorship. There's a lot of promotion of drinking, despite the issues with substance abuse in the queer community. So there's a lot of there in terms of what it really means to have a company advertise specifically to this population, and how much of that is really real.
There was one line that just got me in particular. I think they were walking down the hallway and looking at a ring shop. And for engagement rings, the sign said, they're not just for femmes anymore. And I'm like, wow, that is like doing so much work of like on the surface. It sounds like inclusive, like great. Yeah, everybody can wear engagement rings regardless of how they present or how they identify. But also like now a couple is buying two engagement rings like you. So
Exactly. It's like consumer feminism, that freedom is the freedom to buy. And the upselling stuff, that's real too. On cruise ships, trying to get you to buy really expensive things or trying to get you to buy something as a means of getting a discount on your next cruise is also very real, because they want you to keep cruising. They want you to sign up for your next trip while you're already there. It's all about the cruise culture. So that's another detail that I pulled from reality that, thank you, I think it does say a lot about what is equality. If equality means just everyone could buy the same stuff, I don't think that's the full spectrum of what we've been fighting for.
yeah, 100%. And, when you look at the ways in which a cruise ship really just like really highlights social inequalities while trying to hide them, like that is by definition, like not liberatory. So
Right.
there's real cross purposes there. Mhm.
There's the tiered system as well of various passengers, the lowest paying to the highest paying. And that I also researched and tried to reflect accurately that not everyone pays the same rate. Some people are paying astronomical amounts of money to go on these cruises and be in a suite. But, the suites that are higher up and closer to the top, if there's any sort of turbulence, they get rocked the most. Just saying. Not that these ships move very much, but, that's what happens. So
It is a
I,
really nice detail that you are just spending more money for like the sake of it. It's not like a more pleasant experience, but people will know that you spent that money.
they
So,
will know. Yep, they will know that you spent it, that you're like supreme cruisers. Yeah.
so let's talk about heaven a little bit. I love when they are introduced to the narrative. Like it is such a great entrance. And I'm going to keep it broad just so you can like reveal what you would like and not like to. But talk about crafting heaven and sort of like the influence that they have on this relationship.
Yeah, which is funny because they're an influencer. That is their job. Rebecca has to figure out what that is. I had a great deal of fun writing Heaven as well. Heaven is this gorgeous, non-binary, beautifully dressed influencer who's on the trip in order to basically sell stuff. That's kind of like they're like a 24-hour shopping channel of a person. And that's what influencers sometimes do. And I would say, if you're familiar with Jonathan Van Ness, there's definitely that energy.
That's what I was picturing.
Yeah, and that's, also a beautiful person, especially with the way that Heaven talks with the OMGs and which really annoys Rebecca to no end. But I think where they differ is that Heaven has this relentless ambition, and it's actually kind of frightening to a certain degree. And I don't think that they really see the influence that they have over the relationship coming. I don't want to say too much, I don't want to reveal how things go, but I don't think that Rebecca is really fully prepared for the kind of person that Heaven is. And in some ways that's about a clash of old and new. Heaven is very much the new and the now. And Rebecca represents kind of a timelessness that is not necessarily rooted in a specific era. And there's a real clash between them because of that. But as you might imagine, based on what I said about Hugh views Heaven very differently. And some of the very things that really bother Rebecca are not an issue for him. So you get to see more about them too through how they react to this third person that's now becoming a real big part of their life, at least for 2 weeks.
Is a part of it too with the clash between Rebecca and Heaven? Is it sort of like a clash between different kinds of narcissists a little bit? Like I feel like influencers are maybe like more covert narcissists, but in some ways, but
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. I mean, emotional vampires are a real thing in psychology, right? This is actually a real concept of people who feed off you emotionally. And obviously, narcissists are very real as well, as we all well know. Yeah, I think they do have a different type of narcissism. They both really, really want attention from others and that validation, but just for a different purpose and for different means, which then really leads to questions about who the real monster is, which is ultimately the question that I'm most interested in. What really is a monster? What really defines a monster? This is something we talk about in the study coven too. And what are the different kinds of monsters also?
yeah, I'm not going to go much more into that because I do want people to encounter the surprises on their own. But I do have one last question about the book, and that is about the cover. Is it Hieronymus Bosch painting excerpt, or is it inspired by that? Like it looks very medieval.
Yeah. So when I was writing, I often have a visual in my draft that I use as kind of a inspiration. And I had a painting by, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, I think it's Brugge. Did a
Hmm.
lot of these like crazy chaotic, and I don't remember, I don't think this one is Bosch, but I think it might actually be the same artist that the designer chose. Her name is Jaya Fish. And I did not share that image with her directly, but she kind of on her own, came up with this concept of this chaotic, but also fishy scene that the text is laid over. So I love the cover. I think it really represents so much about the book. But I don't know if I ever would have come up with it on my own, even though I was using a reference that was sort of similar. So it's kind of funny how that works out.
That is super cool. And yeah, I actually I often confuse Bosch and Bruegel, so that like makes perfect sense.
Google.
And there is
Thank
something, oh, no problem. There is something really nice about like, I feel like it reflects the couple really nicely because like they are out of time, but also of the time period in which they are living. Like there's a weird timelessness to those artists because it's so surreal, which was like not super common.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I should mention that the Bruegel painting I used as a reference is mentioned in Interview with the Vampire in the scene where Lestat and Claudia are in the lair with Armand and his nest of vampires. So if anyone wants to find that part in the book, they can go seek that out and look it up. And that is where I got that. I wanted to give a shout out then to Ms. Rice of blessed memory, so that to be clear where I got that from.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us, like to me and our listeners. This has been absolutely fantastic. What are you working on anything now? What's on the horizon for you?
I'm always working on something new. I find that's the best way to go about it. I have written a retelling of the myth of Persephone, where the underworld is an endless mall. And so I am waiting to hear from my editor about that. So I'm shopping that around. I also may have started writing a sequel to Vampires at Sea called Vampires on Vespas.
Oh.
Um, right now, it's entertaining me. We'll see if it ends up entertaining others as well, but fingers crossed.
That sounds very exciting. Godspeed on your projects. It sounds wonderful. And yeah, thank you again for joining us. This has been really lovely.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun.
Okay, listeners, it's your turn now. Please check out Vampires at Sea. By the time that you hear this, it'll be out in the world. So go to your favorite independent bookstore or library, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, it is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.